All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm back. My dad's voice is still not back, and so I'm helping him out again. He is healing, thankfully, but his voice is still very tired and quiet, as he cannot speak fully yet. So I'm giving another week to rest, and I'm sure you all miss his voice. I assure you that my mother has never gotten so much stuff done this week. I remember the last time he lost his voice several years ago. It was the same predicament, but with me. He came up the next week after he got his voice back and talked about how I got so much stuff done. And I remember that week. I'd never gotten so much homework done in such a short amount of time. It was astounding. But, you know, with my dad, I like to tease him and stuff about this, but I will note he's never lost his voice because of straining it. He's always lost his voice because he either got sick or some other outside force just caused him to. But he's never strained enough to lose his voice. He doesn't like to yell. And I can't remember a time when he has. I'm sure you all know that other people like to yell and get angry at others. I'm sure you can all think of a person or two who get angry and yell a lot. We as Christians are supposed to hold our anger and not get mad at others, even when they get mad at us, which can be very hard sometimes. We need to cool the fires of our own anger and extend God's mercy to those who we're angry with. Proverbs 14:29 shows us that, and we'll be there in just a second. But first, I want you guys to think about your favorite television characters. In most television shows, there's usually a character that struggles with anger. There's always the hot-headed character who runs headlong into issues and causes fights or problems. And I'm sure you can all think of some. With so many TV shows out there, it's hard to pin any number of them down. But the common factor of the character is that they all struggle with their anger. They all can't seem to keep it under control. They let the fire burn too bright and just explode. Uncontrolled anger rarely leads to positive outcomes. Rather than building up relationships, anger tends to bring them down. And we're going to be looking at the wisdom of God as it applies to anger. So let's look at Proverbs 14:29-30. Proverbs 14:29-30 says, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot." The word in Proverbs 14:29 that is used for anger is apeth. I'm sure you can hear it in the pronunciation. It's rooted in the concept of someone who's so angry that their nostrils are flaring. Some things make us really angry, and denying that would be futile. But it is important to approach anger in a slow manner and not let it run wild, like a bull in a china shop. Because if we do, we'll destroy all of the china in the shop. We'll destroy our surroundings. We'll destroy our relationships around us. The proverb is stating that whoever is slow to anger has great understanding. I want to note something here, though. It says slow to anger, not the one who isn't angry. I want to make a clear distinction of that, because we as Christians are to be slow to anger. But anger itself isn't necessarily bad, because we all feel it. We all have to deal with it. It's another emotion, which doesn't make it bad. It's what we do with it that makes it bad. We all feel angry sometimes, and we're not always going to be calm and tranquil. But if we're slow to show and react to that anger, that is what makes us have a greater understanding. We shouldn't go yelling and cursing the guy who cut us off in traffic, or get angry about another chore that got added to our to-do list, or let the small things trip us up throughout our day because we're quick to anger and we won't let it go throughout the entire day. In today's world, I think that when people get angry about anything, big and small, they use that anger to directly cause an uproar that is derived from ill intention and malice. We as Christians are not supposed to follow that. We can take our hurt, we can take our pain, we can take our suffering and our anger and offer it to God to help us. Through the wisdom of God, we gain from Him. We can be slow to anger and we can have a tranquil heart through him. Through that wisdom, we can be tranquil. I don't know about you guys, but I like to know the ending of things. I have a hard time not knowing the middle portion and just want to get to the end, like, okay, well, what's going to happen? What happens? And so in a lot of times, I've been known to read through books and skip to like the last 5 pages and read it, and then go back and read the rest of the book, which probably makes a lot of you angry. But how many of you would like to see a movie about your life before you go and live it? Like to see the next day in a glimpse, the entire day, and go, okay, well, I know what's going to happen. I know how to deal with the problems that are going to happen. You can get more time to think and work through them. To see the plan so you can know what you should and shouldn't do throughout the day. When we look at our life and the problems of life in light of the big idea of God's plan, we can see the plan. We can know the end and that it will all work out. While we don't get to see a movie of step-by-step process, we know in the end that it'll be all right. We can look at it and go, maybe I can move a bit slower. When we know the ending to God's plan, there's no reason to be angry right now. There's no anger in the end. It won't help the plan, and so we be more patient, and we slow our anger. It's astounding, the results. Though it is a hard road. Not everyone is able to see how God can take something bad and turn it around for their own good. But someone who understands how God operates in this world will be slower to get angry, because they'll be on the lookout for God's work, and they will know that he has a place for them at the end of that road. I'm sure our firefighters know this, but for fire to burn, it needs fuel. And the more fuel, the bigger the fire. The U.S. Department of Interior explains that anything that can burn is fuel for a fire. During a wildland fire, all types of plants and material can act as fuel. Grasses, shrubs, trees, dead leaves, fallen pine needles, all these burnable materials pile up, and so do the chances of a catastrophic wildland fire. In the right conditions, excess fuel allows fire to burn hotter, larger, longer, and faster, making it more difficult and dangerous to manage. In order to protect against catastrophic fires, management of fuels is necessary. This can be done by carefully controlling fires before the fuels become excessive, thinning trees and forests, clearing brush and grasses, and using herbicides. When we find ourselves in volatile situations in which people are angry, the best thing to do is to treat it like a fire. We need to remove that fuel from the situation. And the best way to do that, according to Proverbs, is to listen and be quiet. Take a look at Proverbs 15:18 really quick. And it says in Proverbs 15:18, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but who is slow to anger quiets contention. Proverbs 15:18 states that by being slow to anger, we can help calm down the situation. So often when people have a disagreement, they're seeking to respond rather than seeking to understand. The wise path is to try to understand the other person's point of view. And this is best achieved by listening. This is why the Apostle James' words sound so familiar to Proverbs. In James 1:19, he states that we are to be quick to hear but slow to anger. When we're quick to listen and slow to speak, we're able to better understand someone and diffuse the situation. As I mentioned last week, listening is a really big key part of our lives, and it's crazy to see how many people don't know how to listen. We as people do a small selection of things from birth. But one of the things that we have done all of our lives since birth is listen. We do it every day of our lives, but many of us really listen to those around us. How many of us listen earnestly? How many of us dedicate time out of our days with specific people to listen to those specific people? How many of us dedicate time out of our days to listen to God? It's amazing how many of us out there fail at listening. Something that we've done all of our lives, and yet we can still be so much better at it. That's why we need to practice it. Like I said, my college education right now as a communication major, first thing they taught us several weeks of most of my classes was how to listen. And I still don't understand how to listen fully. It's a big concept. I hope you all have been listening, because there's a test next week. Not really. But you guys get the point. The listening is such a key part of our world today, and yet we still fail to find time to sit down and listen. We fail to find time to sit down and listen to God. We just want to talk. We want to ask. We want to go, God, this is going through my life. Can you help me? But yet we don't take the time to sit and listen and understand what he's saying back. I even started this sermon off with talking about listening and how much my mom hasn't had to recently. The word for anger in Proverbs, as we discussed, is ath. This word can also be translated as wrath. When something happens that makes us angry, it can be easy to want to go punish the other person. But it's helpful to remember what God did with his wrath towards humanity. He took the punishment himself, forgave of us our sin, and when we became angry, it's so easy to lash out. But instead, consider the one who was lashed for our sins. And by those stripes, we have been healed. Remember how God handled his anger towards us when you were angry. Stop, breathe, and listen. Give some space to the conversation if you need to. Cool the fires of your runaway anger. Even if restoration in the relationship isn't possible, forgive the other person. Take deep breaths and listen not only to the person you might be angry with, but the anger itself, why you're really angry. And then take time to pray and listen to God, to release that anger, to give it unto God, because we don't need it here. Listening to and talking to God can help relax the problem at hand with your anger. Remember that in the end, there is a plan, and God will make sure in the end, there is no anger. It is not an angry end. We as Christians, we as people, are so supposed to hold our anger and not get angry with others. We're to be slow to anger. And when they get mad at us, for whatever the reason, we are to cool our fires of anger and extend God's mercy to those that we are angry with, to help them relax their anger also. Through the anger and through the wisdom we gain from God, we can be slow to anger. And we can have a tranquil heart for the Lord our God. And through that tranquil heart, we can preach and go out into the world and share the word of Christ without anger. Let's stand for